Scrambling is usually done without a climbing rope. Let's talk about if and when bringing a rope and gear along is worth it. Hello everyone, I'm Jason. Today we're starting a short series on technical scrambling, and this particular video is about the pros and cons of bringing, and therefore deciding when or if to bring, a rope and gear. Let's start with a nuanced concept. What's the line between a scramble and a free solo? Just take an example from an icon of my home state, the Flatirons in Boulder, Colorado. While there are many fully technical climbs on the steep west aspects of these formations, the east faces typically kick back at angles of 50 to 60 degrees. Those east face climbs can be Class 3 climbs, defined by needing to use handholds, or they can be Class 4 climbs, where there is longer fall potential and we now typically need to start being considerate and precise with our foot placements. Oh, by the way, we did a video that introduces new climbers to the transition from hikes to Class 3 and 4 climbs. There's a link in the description. Or some of the Flatirons will be lower Class 5 climbs. Class 5 climbs hold the potential for serious injury or death if we fall, and this is where most climbers will choose to start using ropes. But that's just most climbers. There are whole groups of people, not professional climbers, just regular people, who routinely climb the 500 to 800 vertical feet of some of the lower Class 5 climbs on the Flatirons without a rope. In fact, you can buy a book titled The Best Flatiron Scrambles that has routes that go to 5.5 on the Yosemite scale. So is a, say, 5.3 or 5.6 or even a 5.9 route a roped climb or a scramble? Well, it depends on our risk tolerance, and the risk probability we face will be partially governed by our abilities and partially dictated by circumstances. You have heard me say many times that there are trade-offs in all things in climbing. Well, this is definitely one of those situations. Let's start with the obvious main benefit of bringing a rope. Climbing with a rope in an environment where a fall is at least moderately likely is safer, at least in the actual moment that you are using the rope. But is using a rope safer overall? Well, that depends. There are a series of comparatively small downsides to bringing a rope, but maybe the sum total of all those downsides sometimes makes not bringing a rope the better choice. For example, setting up the systems to climb with a rope slows us down, and the longer we stay on a route, the more probability we have that something goes wrong, like weather or rock fall, which the rope itself can even cause, or maybe just a mistake. But different systems allow us to climb at different speeds. The most secure but slowest method is fully pitched out climbing, where one climber belays the leader and the leader then belays up the second climber from the top of a pitch. But there are alternatives, like simul-climbing, also called a running belay. Here we add a level of security by having gear placements between climbers, but both climbers are on the move at the same time. There are ways to alter the level of safety by adding rope capture devices at the gear placements. Or maybe we use short pitching, which may be as secure as fully pitched climbing, but which sometimes involves a more skilled lead climber going up a short distance without a belay, and then belaying up the second climber, keeping only that second climber more secure. We also can make use of terrain features and body belays rather than gear to more quickly set up protection points. Those alternatives are going to be the focus of the remaining videos in the series. There's a link to this series in the description, and we'll keep adding videos to it going forward. Of course, if we are going to use any of those alternatives to pitched out climbs, we better know what we're doing, because generally the easier it is to get into and out of the system, the less secure the system is while in use. It is worth seeking qualified instruction for these techniques. We also need to think about the weight of the rope itself. Obviously, the longer the rope, the more it will weigh. A typical 60-meter rope will weigh upwards of 3,000 grams, maybe 7 to 8 pounds. According to the US Army, that will equate to somewhere above 5% more energy expended. Obviously, cutting that weight in half with a 30-meter rope means only above 2.5% energy penalty. Sounds good, but again, trade-offs. First, are there likely to be any rappels? Down climbing is far more awkward than climbing up. A 30-meter rope on a doubled over rappel extends only 15 meters, or short of 50 feet. Or we could bring an extra tagline. And you can watch a video we did on taglines by checking out the link in the description. But then you are adding more weight back into your pack. And finally, we also need to think about the overall weight of the entire system. If we bring a rope, we are likely bringing a harness and some gear like slings, nuts, and cams. The worst thing we can do is bring a partial system. Not having the equipment that needs to be used in combination leaves us with useless weight of some subset of gear. Of course, the more knowledge we have, the more we can do with less. For example, we did a video on setting rappel anchors with only a rope through an equivocation hitch. But sometimes you just need the right equipment. With all of these considerations and pros and cons, here's how I think through the decisions about ropes and gear. First, how close to the edge of my ability is the climbing difficulty? This is directly related to my probability of falling off and therefore needing the rope to, well, not die. Second, how unknown is the route, or how hard might the route be to follow? Basically, how worried am I about running into terrain by surprise that moves me towards my climbing limits? Third, are there any likely rappels or sketchy downclimbs, either known or, for the same reasons as I just mentioned, maybe unknown? How long of a rope? Well, the more face climbing I expect, the longer the rope I will likely want. Faces, as a generalization, may have fewer opportunities for anchors. That might mean longer pitches or longer rappels. Snow and ice allow for more easily improvised anchors as long as the snow and the ice depth are sufficient to take snow pickets or ice screws. Gullies, terraces, and ridges, terrain that is more blocky, are also more likely to have natural protection points and secure stances more frequently. And for that same reason, I can likely get away with fewer nuts, cams, and other heavier protection on those gullies and ridges, and rely more on terrain belays and slung features. Of course, I need to know how to make the most of that limited gear, and we'll introduce some of those helpful techniques we mentioned in the coming videos. Have you ever been out on a scramble and ended up wishing you had a rope? Tell us your story in the comments. Thanks for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and share if you want to support us. For more information, you can go to our website at www.shortguysbetaworks.com. You can take a look at that video I mentioned about taglines and other rope systems, or follow more of the videos in this series as we release them. We'll see you next week, and keep on getting more out of that big outside.